Thanks very much indeed, Jim. And I'd like to call on Richard Keegan from Enterprise Ireland. He's in charge of the benchmarking and sustainability area and has worked and published on world-class manufacturing and objective benchmarking with experience across the motor manufacturing industry, electronics and the food sector. Over to you, Richard.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me at the back of the hall. Wave if you can't. They can't hear me, that's good. It's always a good start to know they can't hear me. I'm going to talk today about some aspects that we're driving within the state sector to help you. And we're doing this because we believe the potential for the country to do better exists. And we believe that the way we're understanding it in Ireland is through a pragmatic application of what's known as the lean approach, an Irish version of lean. Bedtime reading for many of us, certainly for those in the public sector, is the Action Plan for Jobs. For the past number of years, the state has been involved in a targeted approach based on factual activities, capturing measures and impacts that Derek and Jim both talked about, but to drive the capability of the Irish cohort of companies. In the Action Plan for Jobs in 2014, lean was put into the plan as a disruptive reform. If we could adopt it, it was felt that we could make a difference. In 2015, the IDA began to take on a pilot to say, could they apply it for their companies? And in 2016, we're driving what we're calling the Lean Ireland initiative. We are trying to make available to you and to your people supports to help you improve what you're doing. Unless, of course, you're already perfect. If you're already perfect, you don't maybe need to look and challenge yourself how to be better. When we talk about lean, we're talking about simplifying it down. And in my simplification of it, lean is about doing what you do quicker, better, cheaper, together. Why quicker? Hands up who of your customers will accept whatever you want whenever you have it. I see so many of you put your hands up and say it doesn't matter, time isn't relevant to us. So quicker and being able to do what we do quicker is something that's relevant to most of us. Very few people will accept the quality levels that were acceptable, certainly when I started to work 30 plus years ago. The challenge is on to be more efficient, more highly driven in terms of quality, and nobody wants to think they paid too much for a product or a service. The only way I know how to deliver on quicker, better and cheaper is together. Right across the business, from the senior leadership team, right up as far as the people who are sweeping the floor. Everybody in the business needs to decide that they're deciding to engage together to make that business more effective and more sustainable. Many have probably studied lean, formally studied lean. I have not. The only black belt I have is used to hold my trousers up. So I was asked many years ago, I write books for a bit of a hobby. I wrote a book called Applied Benchmarking for Competitiveness. ABC was the logic behind it, first steps to drive forward. I gave it to a vice president of Harley-Davidson responsible for their lean approach. All I wanted him to do was to tell me it was the best little book he'd ever read. He read it and he came back to me and said, Richard, it's not bad. What? I said, I want you to tell me it was the best book you ever read on lean. He said, no, it's not bad, but you missed principles, rules and tools. So I said to Roy Coleman, what do you mean principles, rules and tools? And he said, sorry Roy, you mustn't have heard me, I asked you a question. What do you mean principles, rules and tools? He went, I said, in my best Dublin, Roy, I asked you one simple question, it's been recorded so I won't use the vernacular, one question, and you couldn't answer me. And he went, well, suffice to say, I sort of said a few prayers for his future, but then I began to think, why would this gifted individual who had turned Harley-Davidson around from falling apart vehicles with serious quality issues to a highly capable product not answer a simple question? And I realised that he'd been the greatest sensei that he could be to me. He had really helped me to think. And I began to think to me then, what did I mean when I talked about the principles, the rules and the tools of lean? Now, I work at many different sectors in the state. I'm not just in manufacturing, I'm not just in food, I'm not just in service, I'm across the whole piece. So I began to think, what were the principles of lean for me? And to me, the principles of lean relate to time, money and effort. How long from when we start to do something do we finish it? Are we creating or burning cash? And how hard is it for our people to do what we as leaders ask them to do? But the most fundamental principle is you must want to compete. You must want to have the internal energy to say, okay, we're good, but I choose to try and push on. With those basic principles, the next challenge to me then was, what did I mean by the rules? And in my mind, there was two sets of rules, one for dealing with people and one for dealing with processes. With people, fairness, firmness, and consistency. We need to be fair to our people, but our people need to be fair to us. If we know how something should be done, that's how it gets done. And you coming from the pharma sector know that more than anybody. If somebody chooses to change the process during the production of a pharmaceutical, is that an acceptable product to put into the marketplace? No. So when we decide collectively how something should be done, that's how it gets done. And consistency. Just because you're the blue-eyed boy does not mean you get the best biscuit. We need to be consistent across how we engage with our customers, our suppliers, and our people, and our colleagues. That was the people, but then the processes. Now, we've just seen an example of Plan, Do, Check, Act, but not quite using Plan, Do, Check, Act, where you talk about doing the planning, implementation, check it, and then go back and review. We're all comfortable with Plan, Do, Check, Act, except for my sins, I could never understand it. I could never understand in trying to explain to people Plan, Do, Check, Act, so I made it a little bit different. And I talked about if we want to improve a process, I believe the first thing we must do is we must look at that process. Not what we think is going on, what's actually going on. We must see what's actually happening. We must understand why it's being done that way. And then we must think, can we do it differently? Can we improve it? Or are we absolutely gifted and it's absolutely perfect? If we found out there's things that we could do to improve our overall processes in administration, back office, engineering, maintenance, production, logistics, anywhere in the business, we then must do something to make a difference, to improve our performances. We used to have a book in the office by a guy called Duran. I think many of you would probably be aware of the book, on quality. Thicker than the Bible. We had it in the office, we all felt good. After a number of years, I asked my colleagues who'd read the book. Nobody had said they'd read the book. I hadn't read the book. Anybody in the room ever have read from cover to cover Duran's book on quality? I asked that question for years. One lady held her hand up one day and I said, "Excuse me, did you actually read it?" She said, "Oh yes, I read it." I said, "Sorry, did you understand the question? Did you read the full book?" "Well, no, not the full book. I dived in for a chapter where I was trying to get how do you determine CP and CPK levels and that sort of stuff." Yeah, nobody's read the book. Fantastic piece of work, but trying to get it into quality tools into an appropriate level that can be used by people, I've simplified it down to 5 simple tools. Process and physical mapping. Do we know what goes on and how it goes on? Check sheets and run charts. What's going right or wrong? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And teams. Can we engage with the hearts and minds of our people to get their energies to allow us to achieve more together? Principles, rules and tools. But I get asked to visit companies quite a bit in Germany and Austria. Don't ask me why, but they seem to get me over there. I was in a fantastic company, second highest EBIT in the German stock exchange, a company called Rational. They make industrial cookers. Fabulous company, fabulous technical director, fantastic team. Wiedemann is the technical director, fantastic team of guys. They asked me to visit and tell them what I saw. We spent 2 days everywhere in the business. At the end of the 2 days, we had a debriefing session. And they said, "We don't understand one thing, Herr Dr. Keegan." My mother was very pleased, but they're very polite in southern Germany. "How did you always know how to ask the right question?" And I said, "I've been everywhere. What questions did I ask? Think quick, Rich. You're going to look silly if you don't give an answer to their question." I realized I hadn't asked one question, I'd asked 5 questions. It didn't matter where in the operation we had been, which process, it didn't matter. Can you please tell me what are you doing? How are you doing it? And why are you doing it? Now, if I translate the last piece into Dublin, why are you doing it like that? Is there not a better way to do it? The first 3 capture the facts of any process. Any process. And the last 2 move towards how are you going to make it better? Who's going to improve it and when? 5 simple questions. We know lean works. We now have over 820 projects supported in Ireland with Irish people in Irish businesses in many different sectors. We had independent analysis done on our metrics and our programme. And as you made the point there, Derek, about audit and Jim about audit, it's all very well for us to say, but sometimes you need somebody outside to say, actually, do you know what? You may be underestimated or you overestimated. Furfoss engaged external analysts to check the veracity of our figures. They used 3 different forms of triangulation to verify the numbers were correct. And in summary, their indications were: they used counterfactual econometric analysis. They found out a group of companies that did not use the lean and compared it with those who did. Standardizing in terms of age, sector, and numbers of employees. And they found the difference. Those who used lean increased productivity by 20%, increased sales by 40%, and most importantly, increased employment by 11%. Plus a large number of other metrics in terms of on-time deliveries, qualities, etc., etc., etc. Lean works. I was asked a number of years ago in a session in Galway to talk about the future of manufacturing. I was asked last year to engage with Fiat Chrysler 10 years after my first engagement with them. And I was asked to give a talk on the future of manufacturing. And I had prepared a presentation sent in the night before the conference. I was asked, could I talk about the future? I said, no problem. Back to the hotel, put a presentation together to augment my presentation. And I talked about the future of manufacturing. And I think in this context, the future of what we're doing in the pharma sector is relevant. I referenced Lord Kelvin, 1899, wrote to Queen Victoria, we can close down the patents office because everything that mankind needs has already been invented. Maybe he was right, everything we need had been invented, but maybe not everything we want. I use that analogy to describe the ability to make and to provide services. We know what needs to be done. We know what has to be done. The real benefits come of when we work together, using the hearts and minds of our people, right across the business. We need to find ways to integrate across the business where the different functions decide to engage together for greater than the individual performance levels. Companies across the world are all doing this. Last Wednesday, Thursday and Friday I was in Poland. I was in Mondelez in Poland, in Cadbury's. They're using these approaches in Poland. I was in Volkswagen on the Friday. They're using these approaches. We know you're all using these approaches. The challenge is how effectively we can use them. In December, 12 months, on Taoiseach Enda Kenny visited Toyota in Japan, had a private visit to see what's happening in Toyota, to understand. I've visited the Toyota plant in Wales 55 times. We have access to the plant for all of you if you want to try to understand what's possible. Understand what the next level of the utilization of lean tools means. But the key point that was relevant to me constantly every time I visited Toyota, every time I visited the best companies in the world, is that they are extremely serious. There's a Japanese word, I don't like using much Japanese, but there's a Japanese word, 2 words called Shinken Shobu. It translates literally as fighting with real swords. What it actually means is, are you serious? Are you serious enough to do the hard things, to do that extra piece, to engage with your people, to allow them to deliver with and for you for the benefit of your full company? Shinken Shobu, are you serious? The future of the business is in how well we choose to do it together, in an absolutely focused and relentless way. It's a Keeganism. As I mentioned, I was invited down to Fiat Chrysler. 10 years ago, I described to them the issues and challenges facing them. I met 17 directors in Melfi, and I went into the meeting room. I get thrown out of many companies for actually describing the baby has sticky out ears. But I met the senior leadership team of Fiat, and I said to them, in Ireland, Fiat stands for Fix It Again, Tony. I looked in their eyes, and they nodded, and they said, that's exactly why we invited you here to speak to us. So we spent 2 hours talking about world class, as it was at the time. 10 years later, I was invited back by the director of Fiat, responsible for the world-class program across the globe for Fiat Chrysler, Luciano Massoni. And he said, Richard, when you came down to us, this was our corporate structure, individual separate functions. But we have moved to make a difference. And he said they moved to have large levels of communication between the functions and putting the customer at the centre. And I suggested one thing. I said, Luciano, what if? What if you could move to a situation where your sales, your manufacturing and design people actually decided to integrate, to create a sweet spot within the concept of the full business? And secondly, then, if you integrated your suppliers, you get a second sweet spot. Terrible simple. I've shown this to some of the leading corporations in Europe. And each time I've shown them, they've gone, oh. And then they've gone off and they've applied it. Then they've gone off, they tried to find ways to do that, to release and to engage the individuals in the company, to find ways to create that potential for energy and commitment and results. The state wants to help. Ireland wants to help you do what you need to do with your people. We now have a national lean business offer. We have a national offer being offered by Enterprise Ireland, IDA, Údarás na Gaeltachta. Where you are in the country, you have an opportunity to ask for support from the state in your journeys to drive capability. I was delighted to hear both Eric and Ian talking about fact, metrics. For many years, I led company benchmarking at the request of DG Industry, as it used to be, DG3 as it was before. We're heavily involved in benchmarking. We believe having facts as opposed to opinions is more important. If we had more time, I'd ask all the gentlemen in the room, who's the only woman in the world who believes you're always right? A hint, it's not your wife or your girlfriend, it's your mother. But that's an opinion. A fact helps us be objective in our decisions in business and also helps us measure our performance as we go forward. We have a benchmarking service available to you, but also we have best practice site visits. I'm almost out of time, I believe, right? We have best practice site visits in Ireland, in Europe with the EU-Japan Centre for Industrial Cooperation. Last Wednesday and Thursday we were in Mondelez with the EU-Japan Centre, and in March we'll have a visit to Rota Farm in Dublin, where Europe is coming to see what we're doing in Ireland in terms of best practice. And we'd have many of those coming over the year. If you're interested, just ask. We're happy to share with you and to invite you to participate. But also we have access to Toyota in Wales. Fly to Manchester, you're in the plant in 40 minutes. An opportunity to see what's possible at extreme levels of the lean journey. To the EU-Japan Centre for Industrial Cooperation does not only do visits in Europe, but also visits to Japan, which can be really challenging to engage with 20 other experts from across Europe, your peers, to spend a week studying and immersing yourself to see where the concepts have brought them now. And a very early warning. Every 2 years for the past 12 years, we've run events with the EU-Japan Centre for Industrial Cooperation. Last May, in 2015, we held the Dublin Lean Summit. There was 430 people in Dublin Castle, 91 cases presented, a number of you presented. We will do the same again in May 2017 to show the world that Ireland is doing things. We are doing things collectively at extreme levels. The state wants to help. 3 different levels of support. We want to help those who want to be helped. And finally, we have published, these are my writings. I write quite a bit. These are my 2, these are my 2, and this is one we wrote with the NSAI. My writings, if you want to buy them, the money from the author's funds go to cancer research. So I'm not flogging my book, but the money goes to cancer research, the author's money that I would normally get. An introduction to manufacturing, an introduction in service, a lean service book, a manufacturing book. And the National Standards Authority of Ireland, we approached them back in 2013 and asked, would it be possible to create a national understanding of what lean is? It's there. It's available to you. It incorporates innovation right through to logistics, creating the value right through to actually delivering it and all the bits in between. The state wants to help if you want support. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard. Just before we break for coffee, got a few questions. Okay, I'll just pop a few to start. Just Derek, How did you implement the RO reject project that came in from the... Yeah, you should just be able to hold it up to your mouth then.
What I actually did on this one is I hijacked someone else's project. We were increasing the amount of purified water production at the site, and we saw the opportunity. One of the problems with water projects is water is very cheap, and making a project pay is really, really hard to get it within the amount of time that we normally need to get projects to pay in. So we hijacked an existing project and we added it into it, and that covered our overall project cost. But the other thing you have to make a change in your mindset is that in pharma we're used to seeing RO systems as being big shiny stainless steel systems. A recovery unit isn't. It's an industrial grade RO system, so it's kind of cheap looking plastic, and okay, I won't say it's cheap looking, but it's not as shiny and fancy as your typical pharma grade unit. So once you get used to looking at that, you can probably afford to do this. And then finally, I'll give a shout out to the guys that we worked with at Sophie, all of our partners on it.
Thank you very much. And one for Jim. Will you implement 55,001 on all maintenance activities on site?
Most definitely. Everything from forklifts, roller doors, right through to the IT system. We just need to incorporate everything.
Fantastic, that's great. And lastly, Richard, great offers, great support. We know where to get the book. How do you access the services?
Effectively contact either Enterprise Ireland, IDA or Údarás na Gaeltachta. Contact your people, they will know about the offer, and the opportunity is there to support you on your journeys.
Thanks very much. Last shout out. Okay, we'll break for coffee, back for 3:30.
Sorry, just one question.
Sorry, one more. Sorry, my apologies, didn't see you there. And give your name and your company, please, as well.
Yeah, Jamin O'Connor from Alkermes in Athlone. Question for Derek, just in relation to air changes per hour, the research you've done, how low did you go with in terms of air changes, or how low could you potentially go? I know you made a comment that the HVAC themselves were probably restrictive, but just how low could you go if you were given that opportunity?
It really depends on the activity in the room and the gowning level in the room. And what we found is, though, that in our systems, our reductions usually fall over after about a 25% reduction because of their design. In reality, we can probably get down somewhere below 10 air changes and still operate satisfactorily.
And what grade is that operating at?
Well, in grade C areas, we've dropped them successfully down to the mid-teens, and grade Ds, we've dropped down to the low teens.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so just a quick shout out to all our exhibitors. I think there's still some people out there for you to see, and there are people out there with funding as well as helpful things that they'd like to sell you. But there's certainly a wide range of suppliers out there, and chatting to the various people over break, there was good interest and good conversations, and certainly a good loud buzz going on. So look forward to getting you back at 3:30 for our last and final speakers. See you then in a few minutes. Thank you. Cheers.